they have experienced this physically, or is this just theoretical, or they know that it exists? Like
the technology?
Yes.
I believe that the technology not only exists, we've figured out how to play with it, but I'm not going to really get into that here. That is what we're doing at my company, though. That is the announcement. So Steve Justice was head of advanced programs at the Skunk Works, and the Skunk Works are who built, you know, the famous secret bases you hear about. Skunk Works did, you know, the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird, the F-117 stealth fighter, and
it's all Groom Lake out there,
all
right?
that kind of stuff. And he literally was in charge of all the advanced programs. So, you know, you got the boss and you got him. And he came, he just finished his career over there within the past 2 months, I think it is. And he was on stage with me when we came out and said we're going to be building one of these things.
So when you say that all this technology exists, have they explained this to you, or have you seen it physically?
Oh, I haven't seen anything physically like that. I wouldn't be allowed to go anywhere if that does or doesn't exist.
So they've just explained to you that this exists, and that this is in the hands of the U.S. government.
I think no. I don't want to get into that kind of stuff, but if you don't mind.
Well, why is it that you want to not get into certain things?
Well, I don't want to you know, I represent more than myself these days.
Right.
So I definitely have to watch what I say.
Well, who do you represent when you say you represent more than yourself?
The team that I'm with. So when you look at the people that are a part of my company, it's Undersecretary of Defense and Senior Intelligence Service.
Is there a list of these people, like, that we could see?
Oh, yeah. I thought you guys would have had that.
Yeah, but I mean, is there like a list where folks could see it online?
Yeah, they can go to tothestarsacademy.com and scroll down, and you'll be able to see who they all are. So
how did you get linked up with all these people?
That story might be a better way to start, because a lot of people don't know this part of the story, and I think you're going to find it pretty fucking odd as well. But okay, so we'll back up a couple years. So I was obviously, you know, I started the band Blink, and Blink went places, and then but we always had a weird band relationship, like most bands, and we also thought that we would never be big, so we started companies on the side. And I had a company that incubated a lot of small startups, like software and apparel and hardcore skate surf companies and stuff like that. Well, I learned a lot from that, and I pulled out an entertainment startup called To the Stars. And I knew I was going to be doing kind of like science fiction franchised stories, just like Disney, but science fiction for adults. And what that means is, you know, I make a story, I title it, I brand it, and I put out the book, and I put out the merchandise, and I go make a movie, you know, and it's a vertically integrated kind of model. Well, one of the stories I knew I wanted to put out was Secret Machines, which was kind of a historical fiction, but based on real events about the UFO phenomenon. But I also knew that I knew shit that most people don't know, because I've studied it for so long, and I happen to put some pieces together that most people don't put together. So before I came out with that book, and before I came out with the plan to take that, make major motion pictures and all that kind of stuff, I knew I needed to ask permission. So I flew around to places. I can't say who they were, but they listened to my pitch, and then I got a email out of nowhere that says meet us next to the Pentagon at this day and time, and I did that. And from that,
you got an email from just a random person?
No, I just can't tell you who it was from.
Okay.
And so then I go out.
Meet you next to the Pentagon? So you just flew to the Pentagon?
I flew out to Pentagon City. Yeah. It's dude, this gets...
Were you freaking out?
I'll tell you when I started freaking out. There's more shit. It gets way worse. This is nothing. So that started me out near D.C. taking some other high-level meetings, and there was somebody at a very high level that closed the door, looked me in the eye, and says, "Okay, I'm going to introduce you to somebody." And that person comes to San Diego, puts me on the phone with a general, and the general is listening to my little stump speech about what I want to do with this franchise, because I definitely didn't want to, you know, I wasn't looking to like force disclosure, and I wasn't looking to be rogue and break secrets. I was like, look, I know what's going on here, and you guys are doing a kick-ass job, and I would have done the exact same thing should I have been the guy at the top that had to make some really hardcore decisions 70 years ago. So I want to support you. I think people are cynical because there's a vacuum. You guys can't say what you're doing. So all these people are just coming up with a bunch of bullshit to say, oh, you know, they don't want us to know, or we can't handle it, or it's all about oil and money and all this weird shit.
But you would put these pieces together independently.
I did.
And so based on books that you read?
Yeah, people think, you know, people think that like places like the CIA and the DIA, all these intelligence organizations have, you know, a monopoly on information. They don't. They get their information from the real world too. You know, they do have access to you know, archives of information. They do have access to some amazing, you know, satellite data and stuff like that. But if you're smart and you take your time, you know where to look, and you find patterns, you can pretty much put together all the same shit they can, kind of, you know. And that's what I did. And so when I pitched what I wanted to do, he said, come up and meet me tomorrow. And so I flew up to NASA, actually, NASA Ames, and had a 2-hour meeting there. And after 2 hours, that person says, he looks me in the eyes, I'm going to introduce you to someone else. And he did. And so I got on the phone with this person, and this person, you know, go, I'm a skeptic. And then at the end of the conversation, he goes, fly out and see me. And so I did. And that's when things really started happening. So I fly out to this airport, and I sit at a table in a restaurant at the airport. No one's in there. And this gentleman sits down, and the waiter comes up. He waves off the waiter, and he looks me in the eye and says, it was the Cold War, and we found a life form. And that's when I started shitting my pants, because I know a lot about this stuff, but you always wait to talk to somebody that is one of the inside people. You always want to have...
So he sits down at a restaurant with you at the airport and tells you that they found a life form.
Yes. And
during the Cold War?
During the Cold War, and everything that they did and every decision they made at the time was because of the consciousness of the Cold War.
And why has this guy decided to meet with you at an airport?
Because the only way you meet with these people, the only way you ever would have anyone talk to you is if you can provide a service that they need.